Imagine holding a camera that shoots 40 frames per second at full resolution while recording 8K video and never missing a single moment, because it starts capturing before you even press the shutter. Sound impossible? Well, that's exactly what the Nikon Z9 II is rumored to deliver. And if even half of these leaks are accurate, we're looking at the most aggressive camera launch in recent history. The original Z9 already shocked the industry when it dropped, proving Nikon wasn't just competing in the flagship mirrorless space, but actually leading it in several critical areas. Now, the Z9 II is shaping up to be something different entirely. Not an incremental update with slightly better specs and a new coat of paint, but a genuine generational leap that could force Canon and Sony to completely rethink their roadmaps. And here's the thing, professional photographers and filmmakers who work in sports, wildlife, documentary, and cinema are already watching these developments very closely because the rumored specification suggests Nikon is about to drop a camera that doesn't compromise on anything. Let's talk about what made the original Z9 such a significant release in the first place. When Nikon launched it, there were real doubts about whether the company could compete in the professional mirrorless market. Canon had the R3 and R5, Sony had the Alpha 1, and both companies seemed miles ahead in terms of autofocus technology, video capabilities, and lens ecosystems. Then the Z9 arrived with a stacked 45.7 megapixel full-frame sensor, zero mechanical shutter, completely blackout-free shooting, and internal 8K 60p RAW recording. It wasn't just competitive, it was genuinely class-leading in several areas. The elimination of the mechanical shutter alone was a bold move that showed Nikon was willing to abandon decades-old conventions if it meant better performance. No more shutter wear, no more mechanical failures, no more vibration-induced blur. Just pure electronic speed with zero lag. The camera could shoot 20 frames per second at full resolution with full autofocus and auto exposure tracking, which was already impressive enough. But Nikon also nailed the reliability aspect. This wasn't some fragile speed demon that overheated after 10 minutes of shooting. It was a tank built for professionals who needed to shoot all day in harsh conditions without babying their equipment. The Z9 proved something crucial to the photography world. Nikon was back, and they weren't playing safe. They were taking risks and pushing boundaries in ways that forced competitors to respond. Canon had to release firmware updates to improve the R3. Sony started working on what would eventually become the Alpha 9 III, and suddenly the entire flagship mirrorless landscape was more competitive than it had been in years. But here's where things get really interesting. Several years have passed since the Z9 launch, and the technology available to camera manufacturers has evolved significantly. Sensor technology has improved, processors have gotten faster and more efficient, and artificial intelligence for subject detection has become far more sophisticated. So the question everyone in the industry has been asking is simple. What happens when Nikon takes everything they learned from the Z9, combines it with next-generation technology, and builds a camera without constraints? According to the leaks and rumors coming from multiple credible sources inside the industry, we're about to find out. The Nikon Z9 II is rumored to feature a next-generation stacked full-frame sensor. But the real breakthrough isn't just the sensor itself. It's what sits behind it. Word is that Nikon has developed an entirely new image processor, likely called the X8, that dramatically increases readout speed, autofocus calculations, and overall system efficiency. In practical terms, this could enable raw burst rates approaching or possibly even hitting 40 frames per second at full resolution. Think about what that actually means for a moment. Not 40 frames per second in some compressed JPEG mode with reduced quality. Not 40 frames per second with a crop factor applied. Full resolution, full quality RAW files being written to the card at a rate that was considered physically impossible just a few years ago. For wildlife photographers, this is genuinely game-changing. If you've ever tried to capture a bird taking flight or a predator making a kill, you know that T. Imaging is everything. Even shooting at 20 frames per second, you can still miss the peak moment because it happens between frames. At 40 frames per second, that gap essentially disappears. You're capturing motion in such fine increments that the perfect frame is almost guaranteed to be in the sequence somewhere. Sports photographers will benefit just as much, especially those covering fast-paced action like basketball, football, or motorsports where a fraction of a second determines whether you got the shot or missed it entirely. The human eye can't react fast enough to press the shutter at the exact right moment when a receiver catches a ball or a race car crosses the finish line. But at 40 frames per second, you don't need perfect timing anymore. You just hold the shutter down and let the camera capture everything, knowing the decisive moment is somewhere in that burst. And this speed advantage becomes even more absurd when you factor in the rumored pre-capture RAW feature, which is apparently far more advanced than anything currently available. The concept of pre-capture isn't new. Several cameras already offer it in limited forms. But the Z9 II is rumored to continuously buffer full-resolution RAW frames before you even fully press the shutter. Imagine the camera is always recording in the background, constantly refreshing a buffer of the last second or two of footage. The moment you press the shutter, it saves everything that just happened before you pressed it along with everything that happens after. This means you can capture moments that occur before human reaction time is even possible. A baseball bat connecting with a ball, a bird launching from a branch, a goalkeeper diving for a save. All of these happen so fast that by the time your brain registers the movement and sends the signal to your finger, the moment is already over. Pre-capture RAW solves that completely because the camera was already recording before the action happened. Now combine that with the rumored advanced hybrid global shutter design, and things get even more impressive. Rolling shutter has been the curse of electronic shutters since they were invented. Fast-moving subjects end up looking distorted, panning shots show weird jello effects, and flash photography becomes impossible because the sensor can't sync properly. A global shutter eliminates all of that by capturing the entire frame simultaneously instead of scanning line by line. The problem is that true global shutters have historically come with compromises in image quality, dynamic range, or low light performance. But if Nikon has managed to develop a hybrid system that delivers global shutter benefits without the typical trade-offs, that's a genuine technological breakthrough. It would mean professional sports photographers could finally shoot completely electronic with zero rolling shutter artifacts, which opens up creative possibilities that simply don't exist with current technology. Faster shutter speeds without mechanical limitations, completely silent operation in environments where noise matters, and zero vibration blur, even when shooting with long telephoto lenses on unstable surfaces. On the video side, the Z9 II rumors get even more ambitious, and this is where Nikon could really separate itself from the competition. The original Z9 already offered internal 8K 60p RAW recording, which was impressive but also somewhat limited by heat management and file sizes. The Z9 II is rumored to push this significantly further with possibly higher frame rates in 8K, improved codec options that balance quality with file size, and extended 4K high frame rate modes that are optimized for cinematic slow motion work. We're talking about 4K at 120 frames per second or possibly even 240 frames per second without major crops or quality loss. For documentary filmmakers and commercial video producers, this kind of flexibility is massive because it means you can shoot an entire project on a single camera body without needing specialized high-speed cameras or cinema rigs for specific shots. You want standard 24 frames per second for interviews? Done. You need 60 frames per second for smooth motion? No problem. You want dramatic slow motion at 120 or 240 frames per second. Same camera, same lens, just change a setting. The rumored improvements to in-body image stabilization are equally significant. The Z9 already had solid stabilization, but leaks suggest the Z9 II could push this to 5 stops or more, combined with smarter electronic stabilization algorithms specifically designed for handheld run and gun shooting. This matters tremendously for solo operators and small crews who don't have the luxury of carrying gimbals, tripods, and full stabilization rigs everywhere. If you can handhold a telephoto lens and get stable footage without any additional support equipment, that changes how you approach an entire shoot. You're more mobile. You can react faster to changing situations, and you can work in environments where setting up traditional stabilization gear simply isn't practical. Add to that a redesigned internal heat dissipation system, and you get a camera that can handle extended recording sessions without overheating or imposing artificial recording limits. This has been a persistent problem with hybrid cameras that try to do both stills and video at a high level. They pack all this capability into a relatively small body, and then thermal constraints force manufacturers to impose recording limits to prevent damage. The original Z9 handled heat better than most competitors, but there were still limits. If Nikon has genuinely solved the thermal problem with better internal engineering, the Z9 II could record continuously for hours without ever hitting a temperature warning. For wedding videographers, documentary crews, and event coverage professionals, that reliability is worth more than almost any other spec. Autofocus is another area where the Z9 II could represent a significant evolution beyond what's currently available. Nikon's AI subject detection on the Z9 is already quite strong, but insiders are suggesting the Z9 II will feature more advanced deep learning models that have been trained on vastly larger datasets covering more subjects in more varied conditions. We're talking about faster and more accurate recognition of birds in flight, animals in motion, vehicles at speed, athletes performing complex movements, and nuanced human gestures and expressions. But more importantly, the speed at which the camera can identify, lock onto, and track these subjects is rumored to increase dramatically thanks to faster sensor readouts and more powerful processing. In practical shooting conditions, this could mean the difference between a system that tracks reliably 90% of the time and one that tracks reliably 98% of the time. That 8% gap might not sound huge, but when you're shooting once-in-a-lifetime moments, that 8% represents shots you'll never get again. The goal with truly advanced autofocus isn't just accurate tracking when conditions are good. It's predictive tracking that sticks to erratic targets, even in challenging environments with poor lighting, cluttered backgrounds, and subjects that change direction unpredictably. If the Z9 II can deliver that level of performance consistently, it becomes a camera you can genuinely trust in high-pressure professional situations where missing the shot isn't an option. Ergonomically, the Z9 II is expected to largely retain the rugged weather-sealed flagship body design that professionals have come to rely on, but with refinements aimed at improving comfort and usability during long shooting days. There are rumors of slight weight reductions achieved through more efficient internal component layouts and possibly the use of advanced materials that maintain durability while cutting unnecessary mass. Better hand balance with long telephoto lenses is also mentioned, which matters tremendously when you're shooting handheld for extended periods. Even small improvements in weight distribution can reduce fatigue significantly over the course of a full-day shoot. The rear screen is rumored to possibly become fully articulating, which would be a welcome addition for video creators, vloggers, and anyone who regularly shoots at low angles or needs to monitor themselves on camera. The original Z9 had a tilting screen, which was useful, but limited compared to a fully articulating design. Making this change without compromising the weather sealing or overall body rigidity would be an impressive engineering achievement. But if anyone can pull it off, it's probably Nikon, given their track record with durable professional bodies. The electronic viewfinder is also rumored to receive substantial upgrades, potentially pushing resolution, brightness, and refresh rate even further to provide an experience that feels Almos. Optical in quality with zero perceivable lag, even during fast action. Current high-end EVFs are already very good, but there's still a slight artificial quality that bothers some photographers who grew up shooting optical viewfinders. If Nikon can close that gap to the point where the EVF genuinely feels natural and transparent, it removes one of the last psychological barriers that keep some professionals hesitant about fully embracing mirrorless technology. And for video shooters, a brighter, higher resolution EVF makes it much easier to work in bright sunlight, where rear screens become difficult or impossible to see clearly. Storage and workflow considerations are critical for a professional flagship camera, and the Z9 II reportedly won't disappoint here either. Expect dual card slots that are fully optimized for CF Express Type B cards, enabling sustained high bitrate video recording and extended burst shooting without any bottlenecks or buffer clearing delays. When you're shooting 40 frames per second RAW or recording 8K video at high bit rates, card write speeds become a serious limiting factor. Cheap or slow cards will choke the camera and force you to wait while the buffer clears, which is unacceptable in professional shooting scenarios. CF Express cards are currently the fastest, widely available storage format, and optimizing the entire pipeline around them ensures the camera can actually deliver on its performance promises. Battery efficiency is another rumored area of improvement despite the massive increase in processing demands. Modern processors are generally more power efficient than previous generations, and if Nikon has done proper power management throughout the system, it's feasible that the Z9 II could match or even exceed the battery life of the original Z9 despite doing significantly more computational work per second. For photographers and filmmakers working in remote locations or covering events where charging opportunities are limited, every extra hour of battery life is valuable. Now let's talk about timing, because this is one aspect that remains somewhat uncertain. The most credible sources are suggesting Nikon may not rush this release, with the Z9 II possibly arriving in late 2025 or potentially even early 2026. Some people might see that as disappointingly far away, but there's actually strategic wisdom in not rushing a flagship product to market. Nikon has a history of taking their time with major releases to ensure reliability and refinement, and the Z9 II represents such an ambitious leap in capability that getting it right is far more important than getting it out quickly. A delayed but polished release is infinitely better than a rushed product with firmware bugs, thermal issues, or reliability problems that damage the camera's reputation and Nikon's credibility with professional users. The photography industry has seen too many cameras launched with impressive specs on paper that turned out to have significant real-world problems that required months of firmware updates to address. By taking extra time for testing and refinement, Nikon can avoid that scenario entirely and deliver a product that works flawlessly from day one. There's also the market timing aspect to consider. Camera sales have been challenged in recent years as smartphones continue to improve and the overall market contracts toward professional and enthusiast users. Launching the Z9 II when it can make the biggest impact and when Nikon has sufficient production capacity to meet demand makes more sense than rushing it out during a suboptimal market window. And from a product lifecycle perspective, the Z9 is still selling well and serving professional users effectively. There's no urgent need to replace it unless the Z9 II represents a genuinely substantial upgrade, which based on these rumors, it clearly will. When it does eventually launch, the Z9 II is shaping up to be a camera designed not for casual upgrades, but for professionals who invest in a flagship body, expecting it to serve them reliably for many years without feeling outdated or limited. So who is this camera actually for? Wildlife photographers who need unmatched speed and subject tracking will find a 40 frames per second burst rate and advanced autofocus irresistible. Sports professionals who demand consistency and durability in challenging shooting conditions will appreciate the rugged build quality and reliable performance. Filmmakers who want high-end video capabilities without investing in dedicated cinema rigs will love the 8K recording options, high frame rate modes, and professional codec support. Hybrid creators who refuse to compromise between stills and video will finally have a single tool that excels at both disciplines without forcing them to carry multiple camera bodies or make frustrating trade-offs. And professional photographers who work across multiple genres, shooting wildlife one week and weddings the next, and commercial work the week after that, will benefit from having a single, incredibly versatile camera that adapts to whatever situation they encounter. That versatility is ultimately what makes the Z9 II concept so compelling. The idea that Nikon might deliver a true all-in-one flagship that isn't just competent at everything, but genuinely exceptional across multiple disciplines. Most cameras, even expensive professional models, have clear strengths and weaknesses. They might excel at stills, but have mediocre video. They might have great video, but underwhelming autofocus. They might be fast, but lack resolution. The Z9 II rumors suggest a camera that genuinely doesn't compromise anywhere. Fast enough for action, high resolution enough for commercial work, video capable enough for serious filmmaking, reliable enough for harsh professional environments, and sophisticated enough in its autofocus and processing to handle complex shooting scenarios that would challenge lesser cameras. Of course, it's absolutely critical to remember that everything discussed here is based on leaks, rumors, and industry speculation. Nikon has not officially confirmed the Z9 II exists, let alone announced its specifications or release timeline. Not every bold rumor survives the journey from early development to final production. Features get scaled back, capabilities get delayed, and ambitious ideas sometimes prove impractical or impossible to implement at a reasonable cost. Some of what we've discussed here might not make it into the final product. Other features might be dialed back from the most optimistic estimates. And there's always the possibility that unexpected technical challenges force Nikon to compromise on certain aspects of the design. That's just the reality of product development in an industry as complex as camera manufacturing. But even acknowledging all of that uncertainty, even if only 70% of these rumored features actually materialize, the Nikon Z9 II would still represent one of the most significant camera releases in recent memory. The gap between what the rumored Z9 II can do and what current flagship camera can do is substantial enough that it would force competitors to respond and potentially accelerate development timelines for their own next-generation products. Canon would likely need to push the development of whatever comes after the R3. Sony would need to think carefully about where the Alpha 1 line goes next. And smaller manufacturers who compete in the professional space would need to seriously evaluate whether they can keep up with this level of performance and innovation. The bigger question now isn't really whether Nikon has the technical capability to build something this powerful. The original Z9 already demonstrated that Nikon's engineering teams can absolutely compete at the highest levels of camera technology. The question is whether the Z9 II will truly push beyond incremental evolution into genuine innovation territory. Will it redefine expectations for what a professional camera should be capable of, or will it ultimately be a very good but relatively safe update that improves on the Z9 without fundamentally changing the game? If Nikon goes all in and delivers on the most ambitious aspects of these rumors, the Z9 II won't just be another flagship camera among several good options. It could be the camera that professionals across multiple disciplines commit to for years, confident that its capabilities won't limit their creative vision or hold them back technically as their skills and ambitions grow. There's something genuinely exciting about the possibility of a camera that doesn't force you to choose between speed and resolution, between stills and video, between professional features and portability, between advanced technology and proven reliability. A camera that just says yes to everything you want to do and then delivers on that promise consistently across years of heavy professional use. That's W. Hat the Z9 II could potentially be if these rumors pan out. And that's why so many people in the photography and filmmaking communities are paying close attention to every scrap of information that emerges about this camera. Personally, if this camera delivers even most of what's being rumored, it represents a genuinely compelling value proposition for serious working professionals. Yes, it will almost certainly be expensive, probably in the $6,000 range or possibly higher depending on final specs and market positioning. But when you consider what you're getting, a camera that can handle virtually any professional assignment across stills and video without limitations or compromises, that price starts to make sense. It's not a consumer product or an enthusiast toy. It's a professional tool that should generate income and pay for itself relatively quickly for working photographers and filmmakers. And unlike cheaper cameras that might need to be replaced or supplemented after a couple of years as your needs evolve or as technology advances, a properly spec'd flagship should remain relevant and capable for 5 years or more. The question of whether to buy immediately at launch or wait for real-world reviews and long-term reliability data is a valid one, though. Early adopters always take some risk with any new product, even from established manufacturers with good track records. Firmware bugs, undiscovered hardware issues, and production quality variations can all affect early units. Waiting 3 to 6 months after launch allows the initial wave of professional users to thoroughly test the camera in real-world conditions and identify any problems that didn't show up during pre-production testing. It also gives Nikon time to release firmware updates addressing any issues that do emerge. On the other hand, if you're a working professional and this camera solves specific problems or limitations you're currently facing with your existing gear, waiting might mean missing paying opportunities or continuing to struggle with equipment that's holding you back. It's a personal decision based on your specific needs, risk tolerance, and how critical having the latest capabilities is to your work. As for what I'd shoot first if I had a Z9 II in my hands, honestly, I want to test the limits of that 40 frames per second burst rate and pre-capture raw capability with fast-moving wildlife. Take it somewhere with birds of prey or fast predators and just see how it handles split-second moments that are incredibly difficult to capture with current technology. I want to know if the autofocus really is as predictive and reliable as the rumors suggest when tracking erratic subjects in challenging conditions. And I want to push the video capabilities hard, shooting long-form content in various frame rates and codecs to see if the thermal management really does eliminate the overheating issues that plague so many hybrid cameras. Basically, I want to find the breaking points and limitations, because understanding what a camera can't do is just as important as knowing what it can do when you're making professional decisions about which tools to invest in. The Nikon Z9 II represents something important beyond just its individual specifications and capabilities. It represents Nikon's statement about where they believe professional photography and filmmaking is heading and what tools those professionals will need to succeed in an increasingly demanding and competitive creative landscape. If they've read the market correctly and built the right camera at the right time, the Z9 II could be the dominant professional flagship for years to come. If they've miscalculated or if competitors respond with something even more impressive, it might be remembered as an ambitious attempt that fell just short. Either way, we're watching the development of what could be a genuinely significant piece of camera technology, and that's exciting regardless of which brand you currently shoot with. If you found this breakdown of the Nikon Z9 II rumors valuable and want to stay updated on the latest camera news, leaks, and industry developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future videos when more information about the Z9 II emerges or when Nikon makes any official announcements. And if you think other photographers or filmmakers in your network would benefit from knowing about these developments, NTS, share this video with them. The more people discussing and analyzing these rumors, the better collective understanding we'll have of what's coming and what it means for the industry. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.